You're listening to the Biohackers World podcast.
Hello, I am Dr. Pencek, and I'm here at the Biohackers World in Miami. I'm joined today with Dr. Patrick Porter, inventor and the owner of BrainTap. Super cool technology. Thank you for joining us today.
Hey, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So I have some questions, though. I'm going to start with, I use a lot in my practice, like peptides, ozone, IVs, regenerative injections, to stimulate, repair in the whole body.
Yes.
Now, neurotransmitters and neuroentrainment are super important things. I think should be used in practice as well. So things like light and sound, like we're using in BrainTap, they amplify these products. Can you explain how they amplify maybe the regenerative stuff I'm doing
Sure.
now?
So imagine you're getting an IV and you have a little fear. You're going to trigger that sympathetic system.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to downregulate your nervous system. It's going to downregulate actually your gene system. It's going to, because you don't want to be in a state of fear. You want to be in a state of openness, parasympathetic system. You want to be in that rest and digest. We actually have done studies that show some IVs, you can actually get 30% more absorption in the parasympathetic state than you can in the sympathetic state. I always recommend that at least the first 20 minutes of an IV, you do a BrainTap at the same time, because then it maximizes that output. Then once they're done with that, now they're in a relaxed state. They can, if they do need to look at their phone or watch a movie or something like that. Yeah. But think of it, every time you have a stress response, you're working against the chemical system, because the liver dumps that 25 grams of glucagon from the liver into the bloodstream. Then the insulin receptors get hit. The insulin gets pumped into the system. All that sugar, all that energy gets stored into adipose tissue, and then now it's trapped. That's a lot of people coming to you because they can't get access to that energy. They're walking around with they're like a supermarket around their body, but all this energy is there, but they can't access it. Yeah. So their insulin, they're locked, right? So if you can get the body open. And think of the electron transport chain. Everything is about energy. So how can we get more energy to the cell so they can accept that energy? When you're bringing in the biologics, what happens is then when that cell has more energy, now it can utilize that information, because it's all information. It comes in the cell, so I like that information. I'm going to absorb that information. I'm going to spit it out as ATP molecules to the body, as codes really. And those codes then upregulate the system. So when you're in a parasympathetic state, you're working with nature. When you're in the sympathetic state, you're running away from nature. Because the cell's going to cell danger mode. So we want to get and actually every cell is respirating. It's not just your lungs that breathe. Your body is always contracting, and it's actually transmitting codes as energy in the form of light through the body. So when we I just had an IV because I love combining IV because it's direct. We're bypassing all that digestion, all that process. We're getting right into the cell. The faster we can get it to the cell. I tell people it's like, in wartime, if we can get a fighter pilot to get up to, they don't have to land, because takeoff and landing always takes all the energy. But if we can just keep it going. So an IV is like you're in that airplane flying across the country. You don't have to land and take off. You just, now you're in the next level. And so you got the energy and the vibration, the frequency to really live your life at that high level.
Now, speaking of energy and vibration, I think some people probably don't know what BrainTap is or even how neuroentrainment works. Maybe you can explain that so we understand how this actually works.
While we're sitting here, actually, we're communicating on a conscious level. We're having this great conversation, but our cells are communicating too. There's actually a field of information that NIH actually, if you go to their website and type in Biosphere, they'll say that there's a sphere of energy around every person. And this Biosphere is where all illness starts. So think about this vibrational frequency. Now we can put chemicals in, and or good and bad sugars, all these kind of things. But the reality is that it all starts with frequency and vibration. So while I'm sitting here, my body is either accepting these codes, like these lights, if they're John Ott energy lights, or if they're red light energy lights, or whatever. Our body is going to either have to go into cell danger response because they're not good lights, or they're good lights, the air. But when somebody says, what's changing gene expression? Literally everything. Your thoughts about the experience, the thoughts you have, the books you've read, the people you're around. So this environment is creating a change within my physiology. So anything I introduce to this physiology, it has to then get in resonance with it. So everything's in resonance. So as these biological systems we have, they've not changed in 200,000 years. I mean, we've tried to hack them and do all these things, but the reality is that these bodies haven't really changed that much. They're still programmed for the Serengeti. So just as an example for the listeners, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, your temperature is going to drop 2 degrees. How does it know to do that? Codes from the sun. They call it the circadian rhythm. Our body through our epigenetic system, which is if I could take your DNA, staple it to the floor, it'd go to Pluto, right? So that's inside you right now. And its whole job is to absorb light code energy and transmit it through the body. Now, what we can do, like in your business, you're putting a substance in, you're hacking really, because it's not just codes from the sun anymore, not just codes from the universe. You're giving it information in the form of an IV, right? So how it works is now this biological system is now in a state of resonance, harmony. It can accept more. But if it's in a state of fear, it rejects. It basically shields. The cells go into what they call the cell danger response. And actually, it's like a hardening of a shell. And so it's not respirating.
Okay.
That's the fear, the freeze response. Everybody talks about the fight or flight. So what we're going to do is we're going to use light. Our cells, every one of your cells on your body right now, and everybody who's watching this, you have cells in your body that have mirror neurons, but they also have a receptor cells for light. These are called chromophores. So these chromophores, they basically absorb light energy. So now we convert everything into light energy, whether it's food, injectable, whatever it is. Eventually it's going to turn into the electron transport chain. It's going to stimulate ATP production. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to give light directly to the cells. So imagine if you want to if I wanted to give energy to the brain, of course I can eat good healthy foods. You can't outthink a bad diet. You got to have a good diet. You can, unless you're Saint Germain and you can transform sugar into healthy foods. I've not met anybody who does that. No. But there are a lot of people out there believing that. They think that they can do it, but the body won't lie. The body keeps score. That's why we can measure it, and all these biohackers that are here know that. And then the next thing is we need to move and breathe. We need to get our body moving. So the problem is the sedentary lifestyle is kind of killing everybody. So what we do is we're going to get the neurons to move. So every part of your body needs to move. So think of the neurons in your brain. Hebb's law says those neurons that fire together wire together. Those neurons that don't fire together tend to unwire. So while you're doing all this great therapy, you're just sitting there getting an IV or whatever it is. Why don't you train your brain? Because there's two things in life we need to change to really get a biohacking experience, to really get health. Number one, we got to deal with stress. Don't eliminate stress. You never pray to eliminate stress. You pray for the capacity to handle the stress you have, because we only learn in a stressed environment. There's not a professional athlete or anybody out there that they push themselves, right? If you push yourself in practice, then the game becomes fun and easy. But if you don't push yourself in practice, the game becomes terrible and you don't perform well. So we want to push ourselves every day. We want to push ourselves out of that comfort zone. I always tell people we're like surfers. We're on the edge of uncertainty. We're certain about what we're doing, but we're uncertain about if it's the right thing. So we measure it. We evaluate. How do we sleep? How do we think? But it's always a stressful experience. But there's two things we need to really think about. In BrainTap, what we talk about is you either look at life as a threat or as a challenge. I want to train people to look at life as a challenge, because they know that epigenetic system I was talking about that they found out in 2018 is actually changing. Every DNA pair in your body is changing every 40 seconds based on everything. So when you get an IV, you're basically sending new chemical information into the body. The body has to adapt to that and change. And it's that adaptation that actually is what observable change, the positive change that you see happen. If it's a negative change, then it still was a change. The nervous system is always adapting. So I tell people, it doesn't matter if it's good or bad. What matters is it moves. If you have a locked nervous system, heart attack is next. In the first warning of a heart attack is usually death. They don't send you a bill. They say, in 2 weeks we're going to give you a heart attack, so you can prepare for it. They go, nope, you're getting a heart attack right now. So we've got to prepare as if any moment we could get the call, but we're taking care of ourselves so we can handle that variation. Our body, I call it Tai Chi for the mind. So, but if we lock our nervous system, that's when it breaks. We need to be flexible. So what if somebody pulled in front of us? Do you really want to expend your energy getting angry at them? They can't even hear you. That's why they say the anger is the poison. Then the poison kills the poisoner. So you have the poison. That's why Buddha says, he who angers you conquers you. So with BrainTap, we're changing the mindset. At the same time, we're changing your physiology. Because every cell of your body, with those chromophores, with sound, music is a powerful tool, right? We can listen to music and can change our mood. They'll go to a sports team. I couldn't imagine going to a professional sporting event without the music they play during the breaks and they have to. They get the crowd going because it's like those cicadas in the woods. And one starts and then the other one starts, and pretty soon you got this big. That's what's happening at a sporting event. They call it mojo, but we have that in our body. So imagine you could connect with the first cell. Let's say the cell, the seed cell in your body. I don't know how to do this. I'm just saying, let's say hypothetically, we could talk to that seed cell, and that seed cell is beating a frequency. Now, we'll say in neuroscience, it's gamma.
Okay.
So boom, like a bass drum, boom, boom. That's setting a frequency. So that gamma frequency is setting the tone. As we age, unfortunately, that gamma frequency disassociates, it dysregulates. Because of, first of all, the chemicals, what we're eating, thinking, all these things, and then our environment, everything plays into it. So I wish I could just say, take this one pill, it'll solve every ill. There's not one of those yet. Those are in the movies. Yeah. That's not reality. So then, but when we drop our brain down a little bit, there's a beta brainwave series. Now, beta's not a bad guy, but beta is the only state you feel pain.
Oh.
And beta does not happen in your body. A lot of people don't understand that pain only happens in your brain. The pain is a signal saying there's a problem with your body, but the pain happens here. That's why I can take people, like myself, I had painless surgery in my shoulder. This was back in 81. They cut my shoulder open, put a bone from here, put a screw through it, nothing more than my brain. My dad hypnotized me into doing this. And it basically is a technique we've taught to hundreds of people now that can't have anesthetic. But our brain has its own analgesia, but only in beta it doesn't have it. So think of fear, frustration, and anxiety. The one thing that's in common in those states? Do you have any idea what I'm talking about? So when you don't breathe, right? If you ever have little children and they come up, they're angry and you go, just breathe, they won't breathe because they know as soon as they breathe, anger goes away, depression goes away, anxiety goes away. Your breath is so connected to your nervous system. So when people say, what's the first thing you can do to hack your nervous system or your brain? Because 70% of your nervous system's in your brain. So I said, your breath. So we regulate our nervous system by our breathing or our lack of breathing. Most people watching this, if you look at your family or friends, you're talking to them, most of them are holding their breath. And then all of a sudden they go, they realize, hey, I'm holding my breath. I need to breathe. And at night what happens because of sleep apnea and all these things, they're not breathing because they didn't sleep well. That's the second thing we'll talk about. But when you think about brainwave entrainment, we're talking about presenting a stimulus that gets them out of high beta, drops them into alpha and theta. What's important about that is those are the two brainwaves they call hypermnesia, super memory states. And really, it's not about learning anything. It's about remembering everything. Our body knows what to do. Like, I'll just use one example because we've done hundreds of studies, but we did a study with autistic children. And what we did, this was with Joaquina Handy in Orange County, California. And what we did was we studied their alpha activity because we noticed that children with autism did not have alpha. And whether it was most of them were vaccine damaged or something like that. Something happened that triggered it. The vaccine, of course, didn't do it, but that was the event that precipitated all the other events. So I tell people it's like beads on a string. That might have been the reason it happened, but it was the catalyst that made it happen. So it's kind of sneaky the way they say things. But obviously, one day later, after getting a vaccine, this is what happened. So it happened to a lot of kids that way. So what we want to do is, now that injury, there's only three reasons your brain isn't functioning right: thoughts, traumas, or toxins. So this was a trauma, and it was a toxin. And then it was embedded with thought because the parents now are impressing upon that child. Remember I said we're communicating on cellular level. So that parent is now seeing that child as damaged. Those cells are now mimicking that through the mirror neurons, through that electron chain. It's making it so. And that's when somebody says you create your reality. I say you don't create your reality. You create your perception of reality. Then reality shows up as you perceive it. There's an infinite number of possibilities in this moment. You could have instantaneous health if you believe it strong enough. They could put water into your, saline solution into your body, and you would change 40% of the time. That's the placebo effect. So it's all about. So we can drive behavior by what we think. So we get them into alpha and theta. That's also a timeless state. Now, as you drop in these frequencies, what we know, and Virginia Hunt out of UCLA proved this, as we drop in these frequencies, we slow our brainwave frequency down, our energy frequency expands. This field of energy around us actually gets intensified. So we all know people when we get next to them, they go, man, you got power, you got energy. You're producing it. You're pumping it out of you. And I always tell my clinics, we have 3,000 clinics using BrainTap. I say, it's not just the BrainTap. It's you, your clients. It's when they walk into your field, and you believe it's going to work, you should believe whatever you're doing in your clinic is working because your belief in that makes it work.
Yeah.
That's why some studies, some people, I did the study, it didn't work. I did the study. Yeah, because whoever was running the study controls the outcome of that study. They've already proven that. There's the observer effect, right? So, but if we drop into the lower states of delta, imagine this, 2015, you're a medical doctor and you're trying to help people sleep. And so you decide you're going to measure brainwave activity. And you realize when people get into level 4 sleep, there's a system of the body now they call the glymphatic system that they didn't know about before 2015. I mean, when I was in school back in the 80s, in college and that in physiology class, everyone knew the lymph system, every picture stops at the neck. But they didn't realize there's like a superpower when you sleep deeply that opens up the brain and detoxifies the brain. Remember I said thoughts, traumas, or toxins. So what happens when you do like the interventions like IV therapy or these kind of things, that's why I said you're bypassing the digestive system. You're bypassing all that work that takes 4 to 6 hours. They get it instantaneously. Wow. And now the brain is able to absorb, utilize, and benefit. And what I tell people, and then I'll let you ask another question. I'm sorry, I'm going on with a short answer to a long question. Right? So when you think about the brain and how it works, the brain is the driver of information to the body. Yeah. The spine is the delivery mechanism. So think about it like the keyboard of the brain. But as it moves out, most people measure the blood system, like they go get a blood test. That's only 23% of the blood. What's going on with the capillaries? So one of the things I tell people along with BrainTap and everything else people do, there's a lot of great things. I love nitric oxide, things like that, and doing that. But also B3, it's a very cheap intervention. Or like I had a B vitamin infusion here because we are lacking in that. And that's like a protective mechanism against stress. Yeah. Because the body needs those things, especially B3, niacin, and getting that niacin flush, because that's going to flush out those capillaries. So think of it like you could do that every morning. Just find out where your flush point is. Don't start off with a lot. If you start off with niacin, do it a little, but you'll find you'll kind of get red and you'll flush. That flushing is actually preparing your cells to receive oxygens, nutrients, and things like that. So I always recommend that as a kind of a brain food, along with exercise. Exercise gives BDNF. Think of it as miracle growth for the brain. And then what we recommend is, just doing some breath exercises after working out, because that's when you have the greatest neuroplastic change. When you work out, you're actually triggering the neurochemicals. And think of every muscle like a chemical factory that's giving you those neurotransmitters to make you feel good. Yeah. So
I have a question about the BrainTap. Are you moving from sympathetic to parasympathetic? Is that the whole plan?
What you're doing, think of it, I always tell people, go to YouTube and type in synchronizing metronomes. Okay. There's a guy that has 200 metronomes. He starts 200 at any one time.
Oh, I've seen that, yeah.
Yeah, and then they synchronize in 3 minutes. And then at the end of 3 minutes, what'll happen is another 3-minute cycle will start. One metronome will go out of sync. And it'll start a new synchronization, it'll cycle. We're always cycling. Yeah. So think of the cells. You might be in a sympathetic state now, but you might be in parasympathetic. You're going to cycle through them all. You're going to be in a neurohormonal state. There's these 3 states. So you should be cycling through all 3 of them, because your body's going, what do I need to be in this moment in time? What you were yesterday isn't today. Yeah. In fact, I love the statement that you've died 1,000 times before this moment. Yeah. Because you're dying right now and you're living right now. If somebody says, I want to live forever, I go, what if everybody on the planet lived forever? Where would we go to the bathroom? We're too many people. Yeah. So the death is part of life, but our cells, what we want to do is we want to birth into life new cells. They call it neurogenesis in the brain. Yeah. So we want to get those new cells going. And then with neuroplasticity, we have the energy to set them up and work them. But they're only going to be around at most 7 years. Yeah. These bodies we have, even though my biological age is 64, this body is not older. Parts of this body are only a day old. Parts of this body are a second old. Yeah. Parts of this body are 7 years old. So we're like in this transitional body. We get to use it for 7 years, and that one's dying and a new one's being born. Yeah. And so, but a lot of people bring their beliefs, attitudes, and behaviors with them. I call them the dragons of the past. They drag them on and on and on. And like in my talk here, I talk about it as like, think of all those triggers, all those negative things you think about, that's your kryptonite. Yeah. Do you think Superman tells everybody about kryptonite? No. No. You don't want to tell everybody about that. Don't tell them about your kryptonite. Put it in a lead box, put it behind you. Yeah. You have superpowers. You don't want to tell people how to cripple your superpowers. Like, poor me, my dad was an alcoholic, or, and that's what I said about my dad was an alcoholic. I could be an alcoholic. I know how to do that. I saw it. But why would I want to do that? Why don't I just say no to alcohol? That's a superpower.
It is.
And some people say, well, that's your fear of being an alcoholic. I go, well, if that fear's serving me, then it's a good fear. Because we're going to have fear anyway.
Yeah.
How is it motivating you? Is it motivating you to face the challenges of that fear, or is it motivating you to downregulate and say, oh, poor me, I'm a victim? Because the victim mentality doesn't create health. The victor mentality creates health. And so that's the key here.
So I have, I guess, one last question, quick one. Who out there could use BrainTap? And let's give it 30 seconds. Who could use it and why would use it?
I think everybody can use BrainTap.
Yeah.
You know, I love Richard Bandler, he was one of my great teachers. He started NLP.
Yeah.
He used to say, anybody who has a brain can use BrainTap. You know, so because we're all going to get hit with stress. When Mike Tyson said everybody has a plan until they get hit. What are you going to do when you get hit? I don't care who you are out there. You're going to have stress. God forbid it's a bad stress, but it's going to happen. What's your capacity? We all want to build capacity. We all want peak performance moments. So think of frequency. It's what you frequently see. So you want to every day tune up your frequency. In the morning, you want to tune up your frequency to be an SMR. You want that cognitive behavior. You want to have cortisol, norepinephrine, dopamine. Your body can create that. We call it digital coffee. In the middle of the day, when you want that reboot, you've shown a 20-minute session in the middle of the day will help you get 26% more work done at Google and Microsoft. So they thought they were working before, but they didn't realize they weren't really working, because you think you're working, but your brain is not as active. In the morning, you get a lot more work done than you do in the afternoon. We can reboot that brain. And then the cortisol trough that starts in the morning and crashes about 2, we can have another cortisol trough, drops about 10.
I love that.
Now you're sleeping. Now at night, you can downregulate, because the quicker we can get you to delta. The problem is people don't know how to sleep. It's not about time in bed. To fix your sleep is not being in bed more. When we did our sleep study in Australia with coal miners, the average coal miner spent 10 hours in bed before the study. We got them down to 7 hours. Their sleep scores were nothing. They only got 1 minute of deep sleep, virtually no REM. You need at least an hour of deep sleep and 2 hours of REM sleep.
Okay.
Within 3 weeks of using with the headset, we had them 70% at the maximum level of sleep performance in 7 hours.
Wow.
Within 6 weeks, everybody in the study was synchronized. So it's about when you're sleeping, by the way, listeners, that's when you do the most neurological activity, not when you're awake. Your brain does more neurological activity when you're sleeping than when you're awake. It prepares you for the day. It helps you face the challenges and helps you to become the superhuman that you are.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Porter, it has been amazing to have you here. Thank you so much for sharing. BrainTap is the owner. If you want to check out BrainTap, check it out. Again, we're at Biohackers Miami here, and we are so thankful you joined. Thank you, Dr. Porter, for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks.
Biohackers World is one of my favorite conferences. It's so impressive. It attracts such an amazing crowd and community. We're going to be back in LA in 2026. You don't want to miss it.